Hey there, Super Saiyans. Welcome back. Today I'm taking a look at Dragon Ball Z Hyper Dimension, the last of the 16-bit DBZ games. It was published by Bandai and released in Japan in March of 1996. It actually also got a release in France and Spain in December of 96, very late in the lifespan of the SNES. It's the only Dragon Ball fighting game on the console that isn't part of the much-loved Super Butoden series. One feature in Hyper Dimension that sets it apart from the other 16-bit Dragon Ball titles, and Dragon Ball fighting games in general really, is that the fighter's health is represented with a number as opposed to a standalone health bar, and your bar only starts to recede when your health reaches 150. It's actually more accurate to call it your energy number, as when you use energy attacks, it goes down and you can power it back up by simultaneously holding the punch and kick buttons. This is actually very much in keeping with the manga, as when characters use energy attacks there, it basically decreases their health a bit and can cause them to exhaust themselves if they overdo it. Hyper Dimension has a basic control scheme that mirrors most any other 2D fighter. Special moves are performed with basic Hadouken and Shoreviewken button commands for the most part, but the really powerful super moves require more elaborate button presses. You can jump into the background, kind of like in Fatal Fury, but you don't actually stay there. You immediately jump back into the foreground and attack, and this ability is more useful as a counter than anything, especially against super moves which take a second or two to fire off. A really cool feature in Hyper Dimension is the ability to knock your opponent into other various areas of a stage, even knocking them up into the air where the battle will continue, and when this happens the controls do change a bit. You obviously can't jump while in the air, so you basically just float around. This part of the game definitely feels a lot slower than fighting on the ground, and it can sometimes be really difficult to hit your opponent as you're both constantly floating all around the screen. You can move a bit faster by using the shoulder buttons, but I still prefer fighting on the ground. One cool thing you can do while in the air, though, is initiate a kind of energy attack back and forth, where one player fires off shots at the other who tries to dodge them, and the two players swap positions a couple of times, and this can be pretty fun. Overall, while the controls feel a bit stiff at times, the gameplay in Hyper Dimension is actually pretty diverse, and I find it to be fun, albeit not exactly perfect. There are several gameplay modes to choose from, including a story mode that explains each arc of the story with a bit of text before each fight. One kind of irritating thing about this mode is that you're actually expected to lose some matches, and then the story progresses. You'll pretty much be totally overwhelmed by the enemy in these cases, but sometimes when you're supposed to win, if the CPU is being particularly difficult, you might actually assume you're supposed to lose, and cost yourself a continue, of which you only have 3. This really only happens the first time you play the story mode, but still a little annoying. There's also a tournament mode, versus mode, and training mode, and the roster consists of 10 characters, which some people, especially those accustomed to the huge rosters of modern DBZ games, might not like, but it's actually a standard size roster for the 16-bit titles. Hyper Dimension sports some pretty nice graphics. Everything has a darker, more shaded look than you'll normally see from the series. The character models are really detailed and feature some really nice animations, and the stages are also really detailed and look great too. I especially like the scrolling effects while you're flying. The sound design is good enough, I guess. The music is passable. There's nothing really wrong with it, just not a soundtrack that really stands out to me. The sound effects are pretty good, and there are also some decent voice samples from the Japanese voice actors from the show, and that's pretty cool too. On the whole, I like the presentation in Hyper Dimension. It's quite different from the other 16-bit DBZ games, in a good way. So, if you're a fan of the series, you might be interested to play this game. Loose copies typically go for between 15 and 20 bucks online, so it's not super expensive. And the SNES is the absolute easiest system to mod to play imports. Dragon Ball Z Hyper Dimension is by no means a perfect fighting game, but it's still fun and a pretty unique gameplay experience on the Super Famicom. Check it out.